everyone, welcome to my channel. Here's the two cards I made today. This is the one I'll be showing you on this video, but the technique is the same for both. I just happen to have two bouquets and here was the other one. So I started off with this new stamp I got from AliExpress. I like it because the lines on it are really fine and it comes with the matching dies to cut out the bouquet. Here it is up close, and I'm just going to use a cheap piece of watercolor paper for this from Walmart or wherever you can find it. I found these at Hobby Lobby. It's just a water-based brush marker pen set, and you'll need a water fillable paintbrush. So I'm just going to take my watercolor sheet and cut it into quarters. I will use two of the quarters. The first one I'm going to stamp the flowers onto, and the second one we'll use at the end of the card making process. So here I am using my MISTI. I am going to pop this panel in here and get out my stamps. And I just wanted to see how both of these would look, so I'm going to stamp both of them. And I'm using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink for this because I want to use a pigment ink so that I can emboss this stamp. When you watercolor something, it's probably a good idea to put some clear embossing powder on your stamp because it will help you keep the painting and the watercolor in the lines a little bit better. At least I've found it a little bit easier. If you don't do this, you may have a little trouble with colors bleeding into each other. This just helps me a little bit. So I'm going to quick clear emboss this with some very super fine embossing powder. I think this is just the Wow brand. Whatever I can find cheapest is what I use. So I'm just going to tap this off here and quickly heat it with my heat gun. The paper will warp a little bit because of the heat, but don't worry, once we start watercoloring, it will probably warp a little bit more in other places, but I've found that watercolor paper is really easy to flatten back out. It's not a big deal. You can kind of just hand press it. So now I'm picking out a few colors of the water-based pens, and I am going to start coloring in some of the flower. I'll zoom in here so you can kind of see exactly what I'm doing. I just realized how far away this is. There we go. Now don't go all the way to the tip of the shape that you're coloring. You just want to kind of go in the middle or towards the inside of the shape that you're going to be painting, because what we're going to do is add water and it will kind of bleed out to the ends and give you a little bit of a gradient effect. Now see, I made a little bit of a mess there on that leaf. All you need to do for this is get it wet a little bit with your brush pen and dab it with the paper towel and it disappears. So here I'm just getting this whole spot kind of wet that I want to paint, and as I add water to the markers that I've colored, it will kind of bleed out to the outside and give you a gradient effect. So the tip of the petal is a little bit lighter and the inside is a little bit darker. Now if you don't like how this turns out right away, you can let it dry and add more marker to give it a darker color. And I've also found that if I don't like how it looks right away, let it sit for 5 minutes and just let the water settle in, and it seems to get better the longer it sits. So don't worry if it looks a little blotchy right away when you're painting with the water pen. It will get better. And if you don't like it after it dries for a little bit, feel free to add more color on top. So I'm not going to show you the whole thing. This is the part that I've filmed, and I will show you the finished product here. So here is the finished flower after I was done painting the whole thing. Now I'm going to take another piece of watercolor paper that is, let's see, a 1/2 inch shorter on all sides than a 4.5, or no, it's 4.25 by 5.5. So I did a 1/2 inch shorter so that I can make a border. And I just put my flower on where I want it to be sitting, and I'm kind of outlining just the parts that kind of stick out very lightly with a pencil, so that I kind of have an idea of where the edge of the flower is going to sit. So, because I'm going to pop this up on some foam tape, but I wanted a background around it that kind of looked watercolored to match the flowers that I've painted. So I'm taking the same 4 basic colors that I used, and I'm just making a bunch of colored blobs on the inside of the lines that I've drawn in the same 4 colors that I used. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to take my water brush and just kind of push those colors to the outside. See how they're kind of bleeding onto the paper? That's what I want it to do. I want it to bleed out onto the paper randomly to kind of create a nice watercolor background. So now I'm just putting enough water on to kind of smooth out any hard lines from the marker blob that I made. As you can see here, I'm going from light to dark too, just so that I don't have too much trouble with the colors mixing, because like I have red and green together here, that's not going to mix so well. So I'm trying to, oh, I did mix it right there, but that's okay. I can kind of dab it with my paper towel too if I do accidentally mix some colors that are just turning kind of muddy and brown. So anyways, I'm kind of just pushing this to the outside. Like I said, I want it to go past the outline that I made with my pencil before. I'm kind of pushing it out. Make sure you come to the inside a little bit too, because I noticed when I finished this one I had a couple of white spots that you could still see behind my flower bouquet. Now, because I am going to put a sentiment right here on the side, I'm taking those same four colors and making a few more blobs over here that I'm going to lighten up a lot so that I can stamp my sentiment right on top of it, and you'll still be able to see what it says. So again, if you're going to do that right here, just make sure you lighten these up a lot with your water pen. Sorry about my hair in the way there. I didn't have mine pulled back today. That's okay, it didn't get in the way of the card. So again, I'm just getting this super wet over here. I don't want it to be quite as bright over here where my sentiment is going to go. And again, once it dries, and if you don't think it's quite bright enough, feel free to add more of the marker color in there just to brighten things up, because sometimes like when my green and blue there mixes, it kind of, I don't know why, it looks a little duller to me, so I added a little bit more blue. So anyways, don't be afraid to get that nice and wet. And while I'm letting that dry, I'm gonna pop up my floral bouquet on some Dollar Tree foam tape. You can find this in the hardware section, believe it or not. So I'm not sure what it's used for out in the garage, but I'm using it for my crafts. So I popped up about 6 or 7 of these on the back of here, and I do want to make sure I support these skinny bits down here where that bow is, so that's why I'm cutting my last piece up here. So there we go. I did take my heat gun and blow dry this just a little bit more because it was kind of wet yet. I just want to be able to stamp my sentiment on here without worrying about it bleeding all over. So once that's done, before I pop that floral thing on, I'm going to quick stamp my sentiment just so that that foam tape doesn't get in my way. I decided to go with the one that says thanks a bunch. So I centered that where I want it to go, and I actually stamped this about 3 times on here just to make sure it was dark enough to see over top of my watercoloring. I only showed one here, but I did it 3 times. So now I've got that on there. I'm going to peel my backing paper off of my foam tape and just center this on here as best I can, push it down, and there you go. Now I'm going to set that aside again and grab half a sheet of cardstock for my card base. And before I pop up my panel, I found some washi tape that I had in a box that's just foil colors, so I picked out a few that kind of matched what color I had on here, and I decided to go with the kind of pinkish color. I thought it looked kind of fallish. So I'm just going to quickly run through and put this tape on all 4 sides of my card. Tape is 1/4 inch, so that's perfect for the size that I cut my panel. It'll center perfectly in there and you won't be able to see the white card base in the middle. So let me quick just get this last strip on, and then I am just going to make sure that it's going to fit in the center and the white's not sticking out, and it's not, so I just used a quick couple pieces of tape runner here, and I quick centered my panel, press that down firmly, and then I thought it needed a little embellishment, so I have these water drops that I found from AliExpress. I've been looking for these everywhere and finally got some in the mail, and they come in, I want to say, 4 different sizes. So I grabbed a couple of each size here, and I'm actually going to use a clear glue. This is like just a tacky glue from Hobby Lobby again, and I'm just randomly putting a couple dots on here. I'll slap these on, and again, you're going to have to push down a little bit with these just to make sure it's seated in the glue, but it dries very quickly and should be ready within, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. These are really hard to hang on to, so next time I'm definitely going to grab a jewel picker to pick these up. I don't know why I was torching myself today, but there we go. I had a little extra glue there, so I'm just wiping that away. So just make sure they're firmly pressed down, and that is pretty much it for this card. You can fill out the inside with whatever and should be good to go. Again, if you're going to mail this with these beads on here, you might want to put it in a little bit thicker of an envelope or maybe a padded envelope. But here's what I did with the other stamp. And then I just wanted to show you, this is another panel from a stamp that I had that I thought turned out super cute and just thought it was pretty and wanted to show you. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this card. I sure enjoyed making it, and if you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.